Hey class, I wanted to make a short little video to give you kind of an alternative conceptualization of ADHD. This is something that personally I found very helpful, and I think students, clients, and parents of clients have found very helpful too. This is something that I learned from one of my supervisors, Mike Rizzo, and I'm not sure if he came up with it, but I've used it ever since he taught it to me, and I really like this idea of looking at ADHD to understand what ADHD is, especially in an educational setting. This works really good. So when we are talking about ADHD, we're going to look at symptoms in a couple of different categories. This doesn't fit exactly with the DSM, but in clinical work, this fits great. So the first one we'll look at is filtering of external stimuli. So what I want you to think of is that we all have filters. Filtering in our brain is probably done by our frontal lobes, and some of us are better at filtering out external stimuli than others. So if you're really good at that, you can tune things out. A lot of times I'll see like a little kid that's working in school so hard and just doing their work, and they're not paying attention to their classmates. The bell rings and the teacher has to come over and say, hey, Billy, the class is over. It's time to stop doing work. Other kids on the other end, they can't filter out external stimuli. They have a lot of difficulty with that. So they, think about a child sitting in class and they hear somebody whisper, so they look over there. And then they hear a pencil drop and they look over there. And then they hear somebody walking down the hallway, or a squirrel is in the window, like playing in a tree. They can't tune out that external stimuli. So there's a filter for internal stimuli as well. And those are the thoughts that you have kind of running in your head. Whether it's your own thinking, images, whatever. I'll bet you've all had an experience where this goes wrong over here. Maybe you're reading your textbook and you're putting a bunch of time in, and you get done reading 2 or 3 pages and you go, whoa, I have to read that all over again because I wasn't paying attention to what I was reading at all. I was thinking about something else. Other people can shut that down. That's something I have a hard time with if I'm trying to read something that's boring and it doesn't hold my attention. But other people, man, they can just shut down their internal thoughts and filter those right out. The next one is the need to move and talk. Some people have to move a lot. A lot of times with kids with ADHD, you'll see them tapping away, squirming in their chairs, getting up when it's not appropriate, pestering like the people next to them, talking when they're not supposed to talk. What's kind of interesting is that the need to move actually increases your level of attention on like a biological basis. So it activates an area of the brain called the reticular activating system, which is a norepinephrine network of neurons that begins in the brainstem and extends up into the cortex. And you've probably had that experience like where you're driving down the road and you start to get tired and bored. What do? Well, different people do different things, but a lot of people have to move or talk. So they might turn on the radio and start dancing and singing along, or pull over and run a couple laps around the car. So that movement and talking actually increases attention, but we yell at those kids and we say, hey, you need to stop, sit still, don't talk. And then oftentimes they'll fall asleep. It's kind of funny. So other little kids can just sit there and they don't move at all. They're just perfectly still, doing their work in the classroom or whatever it is. And the last one here is over here we call this ready, aim, fire. So something happens and you have to think about all the consequences. So maybe somebody bumps into you in the hallway. Do you go, oh wait, somebody just bumped into me, I wonder what they're doing. Was this an aggression or was it an accident? Well, let me react. And that's firing. So you might say, oh, pardon me, or walk away, or I don't know, maybe you initiate a fight. Who knows what you do? But you think about all the choices and then you react. Over here, this is ready, fire, aim. And this is impulsivity. And so something happens and you just react like that without thinking. And then you try and aim your behavior afterwards. So I want you to think about this and think about a kid who is all the way over here on the left. They're built for school. That's your ideal student if you want to become a teacher. Personally, maybe not. They're not the most exciting students, but they're going to do all of their work. They're not going to bug other students. They're going to be in their seat and doing what they're supposed to do. These students over here, I actually kind of prefer working with kids like this because it keeps you on your toes. But imagine being all the way over here on the continuum. You are not built for school. That school for a child all the way over here would be awful. It'd be like being in jail or something. Now, most of us, remember, these are continuums, so we're kind of in the middle. I want you to think about where you might be. Oops, and you know, consider that as far as your own behavior. So when we look at the presentations or subtypes of ADHD, there's 3 presentations. I'm just going to kind of talk about 2. One is the predominantly hyperactive impulsive subtype. So that's all the way over here. School does not go very good. And a lot of students ask about the use of stimulants because it doesn't make sense. How could you give a kid over here stimulants? Shouldn't that just push them right off the chart? And the answer is actually no. One principle of how the brain works that we don't acknowledge like we should is that the brain is both excitatory and inhibitory. So when you stimulate children, what you're doing is you're stimulating the brake pedal. So the frontal lobe works to control your behavior, and it's inhibitory. So when you stimulate those individuals, it brings them back towards the center. Now if you took somebody that's all the way over here, like think about like the example I always use is a librarian. You know, most librarians are squarely over here, but if you gave them a stimulant, well, it's going to stimulate gas pedal areas in their brain, excitatory areas, so that would bring them way over here. Same drug, 2 radically different outcomes. There's some new drugs for ADHD that do a little different stuff than just straight stimulation, but we'll save that for a different class. And then the predominantly inattentive presentation, you can see that that student is really good at filtering out external stimuli, so they're not really aware of what they're doing, what people are doing around them. Then here you can see that they're bad at filtering out internal stimuli. So these kids kind of show up as like daydreamers. You know, they're kind of lost in their own thoughts and daydreaming. They may not be hyperactive, or they might not need to move or talk, but they're clearly not paying attention. In contrast to the other subtype where they are hyperactive and they're talking all the time. So these kids oftentimes are like little daredevils. And the daredevil daydreamer distinction is created by a researcher named Russell Barclay, who's I think he's probably my favorite researcher in the ADHD field, and he's written numerous books, so that's where I get that from. And then the combined type is kind of symptoms all over the board. So those would be the 3 presentations. And it's a good way to think about ADHD. So actually, if we go back to the main chart without the circles, and you look at these, depending on the child's presentation, I want you to think about academic accommodations that somebody might need if they have ADHD. So if you have trouble filtering out external stimuli, what do you think it's going to be like to try and take an exam in a classroom with a bunch of kids? Well, it'd be really difficult. You might give kids like that headphones, or better yet, have them take a test in a room where they don't have distractions. That's a really good idea. Internal stimuli is a little harder to accommodate, but the best thing you can do there is give extended time. So maybe time and a half, double time for assignments. Timed assignments might not go very good. A need to move or talk is sometimes hard to manage in a classroom, but kids might need to move, and they might need to talk, or else they might fall asleep. So there's some like anecdotal information about giving kids like those yoga balls to sit on in class, so they constantly have to move. I'm not really sure if there's any research to support that, but you might have to tolerate a little more of that than you normally would, which is unfortunate because it distracts the other kids, especially if the other kids have trouble filtering out external stimuli. So if you have a bunch of ADHD kids in a room, it doesn't go good. And then impulsivity is something that you have to work on with children. So in their schoolwork, you might give them an opportunity to do an assignment twice, because they might make simple mistakes just because of impulsivity. So with those techniques of accommodation in place, you see improvement in academic performance in children with ADHD. The medications work really well, and we've been using those medications for about 80 years in the United States. So the stimulants work great to treat ADHD. You got to make sure that there's no other comorbid problems like an anxiety disorder, because that could go very bad. A lot of parents are resistant to medicating their children. They think it's like substance abuse, but there's some research out there to support that medicating your children appropriately in childhood might prevent future substance use, like self-medication. So done right, medication works extremely well to treat ADHD. You can also do parent training. Parent training is a good way to manage behaviors at home. And kids with ADHD are harder to handle. They need special behavior management techniques, and as a parent, you don't really get a manual for how to handle a kid with ADHD. That's why parent training can be very beneficial. So that's it for this lecture. Keep it short. Just wanted to give you a little different way to think about ADHD from what you might get out of your textbook.